Junia. Junia was an important figure in the history of early Christianity, whose role is often forgotten or misinterpreted. Junia's name is first mentioned in Romans chapter 16, verse 7, where the Apostle Paul writes, "Greet Andronicus and Junia, who are well known among the apostles, and who have been my fellow workers in Christ." In many old Bible translations, Junia is referred to as a man, but modern research shows that Junia was actually a woman. Junia is described by Paul as famous among the apostles, which indicates that she had a highly respected status among the early apostles, not only a leader but also an apostle, a title used to denote high standing in the early Christian community. In this context, Junia most likely played an active role in the teaching and spreading of the gospel, although many traditional writings and interpretations tend to emphasize the role of men as apostles. There are several points of changing historical perceptions of Junia. Mistranslations and patriarchal interpretations for centuries referred to her as male, as Junias, but 20th century Greek research confirmed that Junia was female. Some scholars, such as F. Bruce and Richard Bauckham, emphasize that Junia was one of the first important church leaders, who was not only recognized by Paul, but also respected by the early Christian congregation. Deborah. Deborah is one of the most important figures in the history of Judaism, recognized as a judge, prophet, and military leader in the book of Judges in the Hebrew Bible. She is the only woman to hold a judgeship in the history of ancient Israel, demonstrating the important role women played in Israeli society at that time. Although the role of judge is often associated with men, Deborah led the Israelites with great wisdom and courage. At the time of Deborah's leadership, the Israelites were in a state of colonization by the Canaanites and led by an oppressive ruler, Jabin, who ruled from the city of Hazor. Deborah was called by God to direct the Israelites in their war against the Canaanite forces. Deborah was not only a political and social leader, but also a prophet who gave spiritual guidance to the Israelites. In Judges 4, Deborah led the Israelites against the Canaanite army led by Sisera. She gave orders to Barak to gather the troops and fight. Although Barak was reluctant to fight without Deborah by his side, he eventually led the Israelite army with Deborah as his advisor. The Israelites' success in defeating Sisera demonstrated Deborah's leadership abilities both in the military and spiritual aspects. Deborah was known as a figure who combined military strength and spiritual wisdom. After the victory over Canaan, she sang praises to God in the Song of Deborah, Judges 5, which is considered one of the oldest poems in the Bible. Deborah left an important legacy as a female leader who demonstrated that women can have a profound role in spiritual, social, and political leadership. She remains revered in Jewish tradition as an example of courage and wisdom. Mahapajapati Gautami. Mahapajapati Gautami is one of the most important figures in the early history of Buddhism, who played a key role in the establishment of the Buddhist nun community. Mahapajapati is known as the first woman to ask permission to become a member in a Buddhist monastic community, and she led the establishment of the first nun community under Buddhism. Mahapajapati was the sister of Maya Devi, the Buddha's biological mother. After Maya's death, Mahapajapati took over Siddhartha's care and raised him. After Siddhartha attained enlightenment and became the Buddha, Mahapajapati felt inspired to follow his path to spiritual liberation. He decided to join the Buddha's monastic community, but at that time the Buddha only accepted men into his community. But then he did not give up. With great courage, she, along with a number of other women, surrounded the Buddha on foot for hundreds of kilometers from Kapilavastu to Rajagaha to plead that women be allowed to join the monastic community. After several refusals, the Buddha finally agreed to the request, but with strict regulations restricting the rights of nuns. Mahapajapati became the first woman to be appointed as a nun in the history of Buddhism. Mahapajapati not only became a symbol of women's liberation in Buddhism, but was also active in spreading Buddhism. She founded many monasteries for women and played a major role in the development of a community of nuns focused on the spiritual life. In the Vinaya Pitaka, which is part of the Buddhist canon text, there are rules pertaining to the life of nuns, largely thanks to the contribution of Mahapajapati. Rabia al-Adawiyya. Rabia al-Adawiyya is one of the most influential female figures in the tradition of Sufism, a branch of mysticism in Islam. Born in Basra, Iraq, around 717 CE, Rabia is known as a female mystic and Sufi who is highly regarded for her profound teachings on divine love and total devotion to God. She was a central figure in the development of Sufism, which teaches the spiritual quest through closeness to God, and many of her works form an important basis for the teachings of Sufism to this day. Rabia was born into difficult circumstances. Her father died when she was young, and she and her siblings were raised in poverty. Early in her life, Rabia was sold into slavery, but after being freed, she chose a life completely devoted to God. She shunned worldly relationships and chose to live in spiritual poverty. Rabia was renowned for her immense devotion to God. One of her most famous teachings was to state that love for God should be selfless and without any motive, purely out of love itself. In many of her poems, she describes her deep love for God and how she felt His presence in every aspect of her life. Rabia was the first female figure in Sufism who was steeped in the teachings of Sufism, which was often dominated by men. She changed the perception of the role of women in the Islamic tradition and gave women a very important place in the spiritual life. Her teachings inspired many other Sufism leaders, such as Ibn Arabi and Jalaluddin Rumi, who also emphasized the importance of divine love in spiritual attainment. Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was one of the greatest pharaohs in the history of ancient Egypt who ruled from around 1479 to 1458 BC. She was the first woman to hold the full title of pharaoh, and she is known for her success in steering Egypt towards a period of great prosperity. Hatshepsut was the daughter of the pharaoh Thutmose I and his main wife, Ahmose. After the death of her husband, Thutmose II, who had a son named Thutmose III, Hatshepsut took control as the pharaoh's guardian for her very young son. However, Hatshepsut did not just rule as guardian. She eventually took on the title of pharaoh and ruled Egypt with full authority. In many images and statues, Hatshepsut is depicted wearing male pharaonic clothing, including the traditional hat and beard, which suggests that she ruled in a very authoritarian and pragmatic manner. During her reign, Hatshepsut was renowned for her economic success, especially in trade. One of her greatest achievements was the trading expedition to Punt, likely located in the East African region, which generated tremendous wealth for Egypt. In addition, she built various major architectural projects, including the Temple of Deir el-Bahari, which became one of the most famous monuments in ancient Egypt. Despite her success after her death, many accounts attempted to erase any trace of Hatshepsut, and Thutmose III erased many of her names and images from history. Nonetheless, her legacy as an intelligent and capable pharaoh remains cherished to this day. Theodora. Theodora, wife of Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, was one of the most influential figures in the history of the Byzantine Empire. Born around 500 AD, Theodora came from a humble, even poor, background as an actress and dancer before marrying Justinian. However, despite coming from a lower social class, Theodora managed to change her destiny and become one of the most influential leaders in Eastern Roman history. When Theodora married Justinian in 525, she not only became his consort, but also his chief advisor and participated in the imperial government. Theodora's greatest success was her role in quelling the Nika Rebellion in 532 AD, a major uprising in Constantinople that almost toppled Justinian's rule. When her husband was on the verge of surrendering, Theodora gave a forceful and confident speech, encouraging Justinian to persevere, and eventually defeated the rebels by military force. In addition to her involvement in politics and the military, Theodora was also known for her efforts in fighting for women's rights. She promoted laws that prohibited the trafficking of women, gave widows the right to own property, and established homes for women involved in prostitution. Theodora also strongly supported the church and monasticism and was instrumental in the establishment of Christian churches throughout the empire. Andal. Andal, also known as Kothai or Vishnupriya, was a famous saint and poet in the Tamil tradition of Vaishnavism, a branch of Hindu bhakti that strongly emphasizes love and devotion to God. She lived in the 8th century in what is now Tamil Nadu, India. Andal was the only woman of the 12 Alvars, devotional poets who expressed her love for Lord Vishnu through beautiful and devotional poems. Andal's works, especially Tirupavai and Nachiyar Tirumoli, are highly revered in the Vaishnavism tradition. Tirupavai consists of 30 devotional poems that describe Andal's desire to merge with Vishnu, expressing pure divine love. These poems are often sung during the month of Margaji in the Tamil calendar, a time considered particularly holy for devotion to Vishnu. According to legend, Andal is believed to be the only woman who can spiritually marry Vishnu due to her sincere and undivided love. Her deep trust in Vishnu led to her being revered in Tamil tradition and Vaishnavism as the goddess of love and chastity. Andal died young, but her legacy lives on in rituals and poetry that inspire followers of Vaishnavism to this day. Perpetua was a Christian martyr from North Africa, renowned for her courageous defense of her faith amidst great persecution from the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. Her full name was Vibia Perpetua, and she was born into a respectable family around 181 AD in Carthage, then part of the Roman province of Africa. Perpetua was a young woman who had just given birth to her child when she was arrested along with her companions for refusing to worship the Roman gods and remaining faithful to Christianity. Along with Felicitas, a slave who was also arrested for her beliefs, Perpetua was thrown into prison where she wrote an account that came to be known as The Passion of Perpetua and Felicity. It is one of the earliest Christian texts written by a woman. In the writing, Perpetua describes her visions and conversations with her father, who disapproved of her choices, as well as her extraordinary experience while on death row. Perpetua and Felicitas were executed on March the 7th, 203 AD, and they are honored as martyrs by the Christian Church. Perpetua's courage and faith, which remained steadfast despite the threat of death, make her a powerful symbol of sacrifice and loyalty to God. Pythia. Pythia, also known as the Oracle of Delphi, was the chief oracle at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, ancient Greece, who played a very important role in Greek political, social, and cultural life. As the main oracle, Pythia was believed to deliver revelations from Apollo, the god of the sun and prophecy, to those who came to ask for advice or guidance. Delphi itself was considered the center of the world in Greek mythology, and the Pythia became a highly respected figure throughout the ancient Greek world. The Pythia was usually a woman chosen from among the citizens of Delphi and was often elderly. Before giving a prophecy, Pythia would be in a trance state, which was believed to be a manifestation of Apollo's influence. In this state, she would speak in a language that was considered a direct revelation from the god. The prophecies given by Pythia were often cryptic and enigmatic, and those who came to consult were expected to interpret the hidden meaning of the message. Pythia's divinations were so influential that even Greek leaders, including kings and generals, came to Delphi for advice on important decisions such as battles and state policy. Her influence remained for centuries until the Temple of Delphi was finally destroyed in the 4th century AD. Pythia, as a symbol of wisdom and connection to the gods, remains one of the most important figures in the history of ancient Greek religion. Fatima. Fatima is the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad and Khadija, who is highly revered in the Islamic tradition, especially in Shia circles. She was born in Mecca around 605 AD and is one of the most important figures in Islamic history, known for her steadfastness of faith, leadership, and dedication to the teachings of Islam. Fatima is often regarded as a prime example of piety, patience, and courage in the face of life's challenges. Fatima is the mother of 2 of the Prophet's grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, both of whom have played important roles in Islamic history. In Shia teachings, Fatima is honored as the mother of the Imams, and she's considered a symbol of justice and female leadership. Fatima was known for her humility, managing the household with devotion, and often sharing food and possessions with the needy. She was also instrumental in supporting the cause of her father, the Prophet Muhammad, during the early days of the spread of Islam. One of the key events in her life was her rebellion against the injustices faced by her family after the death of Prophet Muhammad. Her struggle to protect the rights of her family and preserve the teachings of Islam made her a revered figure in Islamic history. Fatima died in 632 AD, and her tomb, located in Jannat al-Baqi in Medina, is a place of pilgrimage for Muslims.